Before Shedeur Sanders ever took a snap for the Browns, the chaos had already begun. Quarterback uncertainty. Locker room drama. Reggie Sanders sidelined, Dylan Gabriel rushed. Yet amid the upheaval, Shedeur stayed silent, until now. His first public comments didn't explode, they cut. Without theatrics or finger-pointing, he exposed the deep flaws in the organization's leadership culture. While teammates scrambled for clarity and the franchise chased.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Shedeur stood firm, offering the kind of internal control that can't be coached. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed through the league. Shedeur's message isn't about moments, it's about momentum built in silence. What the Browns lack isn't talent, it's timing and trust. As others are pushed into the fire before they're ready, Sanders embodies the opposite, a player growing stronger in the shadows. While others react, he reflects. While some panic, he prepares. And when the franchise finally turns toward him, it won't be desperation, it'll be destiny. Shedeur Sanders has finally said what so many people were afraid to admit. And when he spoke, the room got quiet. The league took notice. The fans leaned in. Because this wasn't a typical press statement. It wasn't polished PR fluff. It was raw clarity. A calm, unbothered, unapologetic truth about where he stands, and where the Cleveland Browns don't. This is the first time Sanders has addressed the Cleveland Browns quarterback chaos publicly. And when he did, it wasn't from a place of bitterness. It came from strength. From resolve. From the kind of inner discipline that only comes from someone who knows exactly who they are, what they're building, and how much longer they're willing to wait. The Browns have been in a cycle for years, rotating quarterbacks, chasing short-term wins, flipping strategies mid-season, and falling for the illusion that more movement equals more progress. And through all of that, Sanders sat quietly, observing, processing, praying, letting them run the same play they've run for decades, panic. While the team scrambled, Sanders stayed still. And now that he's broken that silence, it's obvious that his stillness was never about submission. It was about control. He didn't slam the coaching staff. He didn't air locker room secrets. He didn't throw anyone under the bus. He didn't need to. Just by speaking with calm honesty, Sanders made it clear. He sees the dysfunction. He knows the depth of it. He feels the tension that's been ignored and the leadership that's been lacking. But more importantly, he's chosen not to become it. What Shedeur said wasn't about frustration. It was about faith. Faith in the process. Faith in timing. Faith that staying ready without forcing the moment will lead to something greater than a single start. It will lead to a complete transformation. That perspective alone separates him from the rest. In a league that celebrates flash and reaction, Sanders operates on discipline and silence. And that silence? It was strategic. Every moment he didn't speak was a statement. Every week he didn't push his own agenda was proof that his focus is rooted in something deeper. And now that he's finally broken that silence, the contrast is impossible to ignore. Cleveland is loud. Shedeur is composed. The Browns respond to pressure with urgency. Shedeur meets it with peace. The franchise has built its identity around reacting. Shedeur is building his future through patience. This is more than just a player speaking out. This is a complete rejection of the panic model the Browns have perfected. Quarterback roulette. Emotion-driven decisions. Short-term fixes disguised as vision. It's all being exposed, because for the first time, they have someone who refuses to play into it. Sanders has kept his focus on preparation, not attention. He's avoided the unnecessary battles, the petty responses, the dramatic outbursts. He hasn't taken to social media to make cryptic comments. He hasn't leaked to reporters. He hasn't demanded anything. That restraint? That's power. He's already shown more leadership than most players who are actually starting. While the Browns have thrown their weight behind Dylan Gabriel, Sanders has quietly done the one thing that matters. He's stayed ready. Every rep, every meeting, every film session. He hasn't let the franchise's instability shake his own foundation. Instead, he's doubled down on it, relying on prayer, gratitude, and consistency. His trust in divine timing isn't just spiritual, it's strategic. He knows what so many young players don't, that some moments are only meaningful when they happen at the right time. And when his comes, it won't be by accident. It'll be the result of internal mastery in the face of external madness. The Browns have chosen short-term structure over long-term foundation before. They've reached for urgency and overlooked patience. They've misread confidence for ego and confusion for flexibility. But Shedeur doesn't need to convince anyone anymore. His silence was the build-up. His voice is the pivot. What makes this even more serious is that Sanders wasn't just calling out dysfunction. He was modeling the alternative. Faith over frenzy. Process over panic. Depth over drama. And that model doesn't just apply to quarterbacks. It applies to leadership. When Shedeur spoke about his approach, about divine patience, about focusing inward, about staying grounded in a storm, it wasn't about optics. It was about philosophy. It was about a way of operating that the Browns have never truly embraced. He's showing them what leadership looks like when it's not reactive. What progress looks like when it's not rushed. What control looks like when it's not performative. And maybe that's why his words shook the franchise more than any public criticism ever could. Because they weren't emotional. They weren't self-serving. They weren't desperate. They were centered. He's not auditioning for a starting role. He's laying the groundwork for a career. He's not proving his value through highlights. He's doing it through character. And while the team struggles to find stability, Sanders is sitting right there, already built for it. His message was subtle but clear. Chaos doesn't rattle him because he doesn't live in it. That's the difference. While the Browns make decisions to survive the week, Shedeur is building something for the next 10 years. And when the team finally reaches that inevitable crossroads, when the current plan stops working and the excuses stop landing, he'll be the only one who's actually prepared to lead something real. Because you can't fake the kind of calm he's shown. You can't manufacture the kind of strength that's rooted in faith. You either have it or you don't. And Shedeur does. His development isn't just physical. It's emotional, mental, and spiritual. That's why when the pressure hits, he won't crack. He's been sitting in the middle of it, unmoved. That's the foundation of someone who's not just trying to play in the NFL. He's trying to redefine how a quarterback leads in it. The Browns are so used to noise that they've forgotten what quiet confidence looks like. And now they're face to face with it. So the question becomes, are they going to keep missing it? Or are they finally going to slow down long enough to see what they have? Because the risk isn't that Shedeur Sanders won't get his shot. The risk is that when he finally does, the franchise will have to look back at all the wasted time, all the misread signals, all the dysfunction they chose, while the answer was sitting in silence, getting stronger by the day. When that moment comes, it won't be about redemption. It'll be about recognition. And it won't be about what the Browns gave him, it'll be about what he built in spite of them. Drop a comment if you've been watching this unfold and see the deeper shift happening. Let us know where you stand. Should the Browns pivot now, or will waiting cost them everything? Hit that like button if you respect the grind, the faith, the patience. And make sure you're subscribed because this story isn't finished, not even close. The silence is broken and the transformation is just beginning. It's not even about whether Shedeur Sanders is ready. It's about whether the Cleveland Browns are capable of recognizing a once-in-a-generation mindset that refuses to be dragged into their decades-long identity crisis. Because when Sanders broke his silence, he didn't just call out the dysfunction. He exposed it. With composure. With clarity. Without theatrics. Just facts wrapped in a calm demeanor that said, I see exactly what this is and I won't become it. And let's be real, that shook some people. You could feel it in the reactions. The fans. The media. The players who've been stuck in this whirlpool of next man up quarterback roulette. The front office that can't seem to stick to a plan long enough to watch it work. Everyone felt it. Because it's not every day that a rookie quarterback breaks the unwritten NFL rule. Stay quiet, wait your turn, toe the company line. But Shedeur's not here to follow scripts written by unstable systems. He's here to rewrite the entire approach. What he's doing, intentionally or not, is challenging the Browns' deepest flaw, their addiction to urgency. The impulse to fix, to react, to constantly rearrange the pieces without ever asking why the board is broken in the first place. And while that cycle has continued, Shedeur has stood in full contrast to it. Steady, focused, patient, rooted in something the Browns haven't operated with in years, faith. Let's stop and take that in. Because this isn't just about a quarterback waiting for a chance. This is about someone bringing a completely different culture to a team that's been trapped in its own chaos for years. Sanders doesn't scream for his moment, he prepares for it. He doesn't compete with his teammates, he sharpens in silence. He doesn't call out the play calling or the leadership or the favoritism, he trusts timing. And yet, the second he finally spoke out, it was as if the air changed. Because what he revealed wasn't petty. It wasn't about being benched or not getting reps. It was about something bigger, the lack of alignment between his mindset and the way the franchise has been operating. The Browns drafted a quarterback with composure, character, and spiritual grounding, and then didn't know what to do with him. That's the problem. You can't plug Shedeur into a system built on fear and expect him to thrive. You have to build around him. You have to meet him at that level of discipline, that level of vision, that level of inner clarity that refuses to flinch just because the scoreboard isn't in your favor. He's not here to be thrown into the mix and see what happens. He's here to become the foundation. And that's what Cleveland hasn't realized, or worse, hasn't been ready to accept. Because accepting Shedeur means changing more than the quarterback. It means changing everything, from how they evaluate leadership to how they handle pressure, to how they define progress. And that kind of shift, that terrifies unstable organizations. But for Shedeur, it's just the natural next step. His faith isn't performative. It's practical. It informs how he leads, how he speaks, how he trains, how he waits. And that waiting? It hasn't been passive. It's been powerful. A daily, deliberate commitment to being prepared, not just when the opportunity comes but before anyone even thinks to hand it to him. That's what made his comments so undeniable. He wasn't reacting. He was revealing. Revealing that while the franchise has been caught in its own noise, he's been cultivating something quiet, solid, built on prayer, patience, and presence. And that's why it's no longer a question of if his time is coming. It's when. Because this kind of presence doesn't stay on the sidelines forever. This kind of grounding? It eventually pulls the spotlight toward itself, without asking for it. The fans are starting to see it. The players in that locker room feel it. And even the front office, as much as they may try to stick to their existing plan, knows the energy has shifted. Because you can only run from clarity for so long before the confusion gets too loud to ignore. And right now, clarity looks like Shedeur Sanders. He's not perfect. No one's saying that. But what he brings, the mindset, the discipline, the spiritual depth, that's not something you coach into a player. That's built. That's cultivated. And it's exactly what the Browns have needed for years. They've had talent. They've had big arms. They've had quick feet and faster hype cycles. But what they haven't had is someone who sees the chaos and simply refuses to become it. That's who Shedeur is. And the irony of it all? If Cleveland had been more stable, they might have already turned that corner with him. But because they're not, his approach feels foreign. Almost too composed. Too quiet. Too intentional. But that's exactly the point. Because greatness doesn't come from matching dysfunction. It comes from transforming it. And when Shedeur finally steps into that role, whether it's next game, next month, or next season, it won't feel like a new beginning. It'll feel like the moment everything finally aligned. Not because of pressure. Not because of stats. But because of readiness. Shedeur Sanders has already shown he can handle the waiting. He's shown he can handle the pressure. He's shown he can sit in silence while the world speculates. Now the question is, can the Browns handle the shift that comes when they finally hand him the keys? Because it's coming. And it won't be subtle. When he steps onto that field, he's not just going to play quarterback. He's going to reset the tone of that franchise. Quietly. Strategically. Fully. And when he wins, not just games but respect, control, leadership, the Browns will have no choice but to acknowledge that the path they were so scared to take was the one they needed all along. So what happens next? That depends on whether the team is ready to stop chasing noise and start listening to the stillness that's been preparing in the background. Sanders is ready. He's more than ready. But whether Cleveland recognizes that now, or waits until they're out of options, is entirely on them. At this point, there's no more gray area. The line has been drawn. On one side, you have the Cleveland Browns, still trapped in their predictable cycle of instability, miscommunication, and knee-jerk decisions. On the other, Shedeur Sanders, disciplined, spiritual, focused, and unbothered. And now that he's spoken, the contrast couldn't be more obvious. For months, the narrative was manageable. He was quiet, so people projected. Was he frustrated? Was he checked out? Was he just not ready? That's how the NFL machine works. If you're not talking, someone will fill in the blanks for you. And in a franchise as dysfunctional as the Browns, silence has always been interpreted as weakness. But Shedeur's silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And when he finally did break it, it became crystal clear. He had been observing everything. Not just on the field but in the locker room. In the meetings. In the mood of the team. And more importantly, in the decisions that kept pushing long-term potential aside in favor of short-term control. His message was a subtle but stinging reminder that he's been aware the whole time. He knows exactly what's going on. And he's choosing to stay aligned with his values instead of chasing their chaos. That's what the Browns don't understand. Shedeur doesn't want to survive the system. He wants to transform it. And that scares teams like Cleveland. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't a quarterback you plug into your broken process and hope for the best. He's the quarterback that makes you rethink the entire process. That's the real weight of what he said when he broke his silence. It wasn't just about his role. It was about a broken system, a misaligned culture, a fear-based decision-making style that's been hurting the team longer than anyone wants to admit. And he said it all without throwing a single person under the bus. That's how you know he's different. He didn't call out coaches. He didn't attack teammates. He didn't whine. He didn't spin it. He just calmly peeled the curtain back, and what we saw behind it was exactly what we expected. A talented franchise, poorly managed, spiritually disjointed, constantly reacting, rarely building. And while that machine kept churning, Sanders was doing something they weren't used to. He was waiting on purpose. Not idling. Not sulking. Not passively letting his talent waste away. He was preparing. Quietly. Deliberately. With faith. With patience. With an unshakable belief that when the moment finally came, it wouldn't be luck. It would be alignment. And here's the thing, he's not wrong. Everything about the Browns right now points to an eventual breaking point. The quarterback carousel is already creaking. The decision to elevate Dillon Gabriel might have seemed like the safer bet on paper, but it's clear that paper doesn't reflect the deeper fractures inside the organization. There's no long-term vision here. There's no cohesive development philosophy. There's no cultural anchor. And Shedeur didn't just point that out, he showed what the opposite looks like. Where the Browns respond with noise, he leads with calm. Where they fall into reaction, he practices restraint. Where they lack trust, he leans into faith. And that faith isn't just religious. It's structural. He trusts that when you do the right things, in the right order, for the right reasons, the outcome takes care of itself. But that kind of mindset is rare in this league. The NFL rewards immediacy. If you're not a highlight reel by week 2, you're considered a developmental prospect. If you're not barking on the sidelines, you lack fire. If you're not posting something flashy, you don't want it bad enough. Sanders rejects all of that. And he's not just rejecting it with words. He's rejecting it with how he lives, how he trains, how he speaks. Or doesn't speak. And when he finally decided to speak, he gave us the blueprint. The Browns may still be stuck in chaos, but Shedeur? He's operating on divine timing. He knows that some stages aren't meant to be rushed. He knows that some storms are meant to test your foundation. And he knows that when leadership is fractured, the one who stays rooted eventually becomes the one everyone turns to. That's what's happening here. It's not hype. It's not drama. It's inevitability. Because when the Browns find themselves, yet again, at the edge of collapse, when their latest plan backfires, when the fan base starts chanting for change, when the locker room loses confidence in the revolving door, there's only one person on the roster who's actually prepared. It's not going to be about stats. It's not going to be about draft capital. It's going to be about who's been ready in the shadows, staying aligned while everyone else played the noise game. And that person is Shedeur Sanders. Let's be clear, this isn't a feel-good story about patience. This is a direct call-out of a system that doesn't know how to recognize grounded leadership when it sees it. The Browns are fumbling it. Slowly. Publicly. Predictably. They have someone who brings calm to chaos, and they're treating him like just another option. They're mistaking humility for passivity. They're mistaking silence for uncertainty. They're mistaking divine timing for delay. But soon they won't be able to keep making that mistake. Because the moment is coming. And when it hits, when the Browns finally hit the wall they always do, there's not going to be a press release or a locker room speech that saves them. There's going to be Shedeur walking in, composed, unbothered, and absolutely ready. And then all of this? The silence, the frustration, the mismanagement, it'll be part of a bigger story. A legacy story. One that says, patience wasn't passivity. It was power. The question is, will the Browns recognize it before it's too late? Or will they keep chasing noise, while the one person built for this moment sits calmly, spiritually aligned, watching everything fall apart, again? There's a reason Shedeur Sanders didn't lash out. Because he doesn't need to. When you're walking in purpose, you don't chase moments, you become them. And that's exactly what's unfolding right now in Cleveland. This isn't just a quarterback controversy. This is a full-blown mirror being held up to the Browns organization. And the reflection? It's not flattering. While they've been busy patching holes, avoiding accountability, and playing hot potato with their quarterback depth chart, Sanders has been staying ready, focused, silent, not because he didn't have something to say but because he knew when he said it, it would carry weight. And now it has. He's revealed more with one composed, measured response than most players reveal in an entire season of press conferences. He's shown that behind the curtain of instability and indecision, there's one person who isn't waiting for validation. He's preparing for inevitability. Because when the dust settles, when the Gabriel experiment fizzles out, when the locker room loses faith in another rushed decision, when the fans start calling for something real, there's only going to be one name that makes sense. The one that never panicked. The one that never fought for attention. The one that never turned adversity into drama. Shedeur Sanders. And when he finally takes that field, the narrative won't be about whether he's earned it. That question will feel ridiculous. Because what he's shown, off the field, is exactly what the Browns have lacked on it. Direction. Composure. Clarity. Not just a quarterback. A stabilizer. And for a team that's been addicted to motion for so long, that stillness is going to feel like revolution. This isn't just about football anymore. It's about what leadership actually looks like when the cameras aren't rolling. It's about how a player carries himself when the world's ignoring him. It's about how you prepare when the system doesn't believe in timing, only urgency. But Sanders does. And now we do too. Drop your thoughts below. Has the Browns front office missed the moment? Or is Shedeur still perfectly aligned for a debut that changes everything? Tap that like button if you're ready for a shift in Cleveland, and hit subscribe if you've been tracking this quiet rise from the start. Because it's no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when that moment hits, Shedeur Sanders won't just be stepping onto the field. He'll be stepping into everything the Browns said they wanted, but couldn't see until it was staring them in the face.